Hello, everyone, and welcome to TechScope News. I'm Tiffany Nielsen, and joining me is my incredible co host, Johannes Beekman. How are you doing today, Johannes?
I'm doing great, Tiffany. How's your day going?
Amazing. Thanks for asking. And we'd like to thank you all so much for coming out for our first newscast of 2026. And we have an information packed lineup today. So let's dive right in. The annual Consumer Electronics Show, or as many know it as CES, just took place last week in Las Vegas, blurring the boundaries between reality with innovations that appear almost science fiction. Johannes and I attended and covered a lot of ground, but CES, well, it's huge. Wouldn't you agree, Johannes?
Oh, absolutely, Tiffany. It's enormous. So the CES organizers put the attendance this year at about 148,000 attendees, spread across roughly 2.6 million square feet and multiple venues around Las Vegas. So we felt every bit of it. We moved between the LVCC's North, Central, South, and West halls, over to the Venetian, and then up to the CES Foundry at the Fontainebleau. I definitely got my steps in last week.
Me too. And IoT Marketing officially launched TechScope Connect, a new virtual community for emerging technology professionals and business leaders. This was during CES 2026 in Las Vegas. And the launch was celebrated with an exclusive industry focused event produced by IoT Marketing and hosted in collaboration with the Edge AI Foundation at Audio Bar. And we had a great turnout, so thank you for everyone who showed up. And to tell you more about TechScope Connect, TechScope Connect aims to provide a dedicated space for business leaders and technologists to share insights, gain visibility, and collaborate across sectors that rarely intersect. As part of its launch, TechScope Connect is offering two limited time only programs. The first is the Founders Circle, which includes a partner level membership with marketplace placement, a custom sponsorship package, and speaking opportunities at IoT Marketing's 2026 virtual summits. And the second is the Founding Members Program, which includes platform access and the opportunity to directly shape the community experience. And for more information on these offerings, as well as to sign up for membership, you can visit techscopeconnect.com. Johannes, anything else to add about TechScope Connect?
Well, what I would like to add is that TechScope Connect isn't another content feed or networking list. This is infrastructure. The goal is to bring together people who normally operate in parallel, founders, operators, engineers, decision makers, and give them a shared space to compare notes before trends harden into assumptions. This is about informed conversation, early signal, and practical collaboration across emerging technologies.
Thanks, Johannes. And Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang delivered an unexpectedly lengthy presentation at CES highlighting advancements with the Rubin computing architecture, which has been developed to meet the increasing computation demands that AI adoption creates. The new architecture is set to begin replacing Blackwell architecture in the second half of this year. And NVIDIA continued its push to bring the AI revolution into the physical world, showcasing its Alpamayo family of open source AI models and tools that will be used by autonomous vehicles this year. Johannes, we visited the NVIDIA showcase at Fontainebleau. Can you tell us more about the Rubin architecture?
Oh, absolutely, Tiffany. So, first of all, the Rubin GPU runs at 50 petaflops, which is roughly 5 times the performance of Blackwell. So, this is a big step up. Vera Rubin, however, is best understood as a rack scales system NVIDIA calls the Vera Rubin NVL72. It has 72 Rubin GPUs and 36 Vera CPUs interconnected with NVLink 6. NVIDIA is quoting up to 3600 petaflops of NVFP4 inference and 2520 petaflops of NVFP4 training performance for a single rack. And zooming in further, an individual Rubin GPU is rated at 50 petaflops, as I said, for inference, while the Vera Rubin superchip, which is two GPUs paired with the Vera CPU, reaches 100 petaflops. The other headline benchmark of this rack is the data movement, and they put a lot of effort into this. So the rack contains 20.7 terabytes of HBM4 memory, delivering approximately 1,580 terabytes per second of memory bandwidth, while NVLink provides 260 terabytes per second of interconnect bandwidth across the rack. Put simply, Nvidia is designing the rack to behave like a single massive accelerator, an approach which is well suited to the demands of today's latest and largest models.
Thank you, Johannes. And one trend that was unavoidable at CES was physical AI, which is taking shape in more forms than most realize. Humanoid robots shadowboxed, danced, and pretended to run small shops. Singapore based Sharpa displayed a robotic hand playing table tennis and dealing blackjack hands. Nvidia announced a new version of its vision language model called Groot for humanoid robots that can turn sensor inputs into robot body control, as well as a version of its Cosmos model for robot reasoning and planning. Huang said he expects to see robots with some human level capabilities this year. According to CES's official exhibitor list, 40 companies at the event mentioned humanoid robots on the show's website. And the Consumer Technology Association, which produces CES, hasn't said how many humanoid robot companies presented at this year's event. However, CTA President Kinsey Fabrizio said that the number of industrial and consumer robots at the show has been growing. And additionally, Hyundai's press conference focused on its robotics partnership with Boston Dynamics. But the company has revealed that they're working with Google's AI research lab rather than competitors to train operating and existing Atlas robots, as well as the new iteration of the humanoid robot that was shown on stage at CES. Johannes, do you feel that we're in the midst of the rise of the robots?
I think we are, Tiffany, but not in the way the stage demos suggest. The real signals is that manufacturers are now publishing deployment schedules. Hyundai says Boston Dynamics Atlas is slated to start on repetitive sequencing tasks at its Georgia plant in 2028. And it's building a production system aimed at 30,000 robot units a year by 2028. Boston Dynamics adds that its first Atlas deployments for 2026 are already committed, including fleets scheduled for Hyundai and Google DeepMind, which is partnering to advance the AI that controls complex robots. In parallel, Nvidia is releasing open robotics models and simulation testing frameworks meant to train skills safely before a robot ever touches a production line. The caution, of course, is important. Even Atlas's first public walk was remotely piloted. So, yes, the rise is underway, but it will be measured in uptime and safety and not necessarily in applause.
Thanks, Johannes. And at CES this year, Nurable announced a partnership with HP's gaming arm HyperX to produce EEG headsets with specific benefits for gamers. As gamers are looking for any way to improve their performance, the company has developed algorithms and training programs to help. You might already know that being in a place of high stress isn't great for concentration and focus. The Neural system encourages you to reach a state of calm focus with demonstrable improvements in reaction time and accuracy. It's a system that was initially designed in partnership with Singapore's Air Force to help ensure pilots remain in a state of calm focus. But before we dive in too deep, Johannes, can you fill us in on what EEG means?
EEG stands for electroencephalography, a non invasive method of recording the brain's electrical activity using electrodes placed on the scalp. In headset form factor, the same basic principle is miniaturized. A small set of sensors detects brainwave patterns, and software looks for changes that correlate with states such as attention, cognitive workload, or fatigue. Used responsibly, that enables real time biofeedback, for example, coaching a player towards steadier attentional control, flagging mental overload, or prompting better time breaks. Research on passive EEG systems shows the broader idea. Systems can adapt what they present based on inferred cognitive load.
Thanks, Johannes. And there are plenty of companies at CES that are using EEGs for more specific goals, such as MyWaves, which uses an EEG as part of its broader offering to use sound patterns to make it easier to go to sleep. But Johannes, what do you feel will be the consumer response to the evolution of EEGs? And do you feel everyone will be strapping an EEG to their skulls in, say, the next 10 years?
Well, I definitely think people will be curious, but also cautious. If EEG shows up quietly inside gear people already use, gaming headsets, sleep devices, and it genuinely helps them focus, recover, or perform better, some groups will lean in pretty quickly. For example, competitive gamers, pilots, maybe people using it for sleep or stress management. But we're not there yet. These systems still struggle with comfort, signal quality when you move, and the simple reality that most people don't want to think about sensors on their head every day. And once you introduce the idea that this is literally brain data, adoption slows down even more. So I don't see this becoming universal. It feels more like a specialized tool that grows steadily in specific niches, not something everyone wears all the time.
Thanks, Johannes. And Lego joined CES for the first time to hold a behind closed doors showcase of its smart play system, which includes bricks, tiles, and mini figurines that can all interact with each other and play sounds, with both of the debut sets having a Star Wars theme. As a boy mom and a big fan of Legos, this announcement was pretty cool, in my opinion. Were there any other gadgets that caught your attention at the show, Johannes?
Well, to be honest, and I know there were a lot of physical AI booths, but CS this year didn't feel like a show with a lot of big wow moments. It was much more about things getting incrementally better from and progress from last year. But one thing that you couldn't ignore was smart glasses. They were literally everywhere, not just one or two booths, but across the show. And when that many companies are showing versions of the same idea, it usually means that the companies think that the category is finally close enough to real world use to take a serious bet.
Thanks, Johannes. I'm surprised you weren't more blown away by the lollipops that you get to hear music from as you're sucking on them. That's wild to me. I mean, I'm surprised that didn't make your list. Well, we heard a lot about agentic retail at CES, but meanwhile, in New York City, Google and Walmart announced their partnership to integrate AI driven shopping, real time commerce data, and drone delivery into the retail experience at the NRF Big Show. The collaboration signals how conversational AI and new fulfillment models are moving from experimentation into retail infrastructure. Central to the partnership is the planned integration of Walmart products into Google AI's chatbot Gemini. Shoppers will be able to search for, compare, and purchase products directly within conversational AI. Gemini will access real time assortments, pricing, and availability, while loyalty members can link their Walmart accounts to enable personalized recommendations based on shopping history and preferences. Google also introduced the Universal Commerce Protocol, or UCP. Johannes, can you tell us more about that?
Sure, Tiffany. So think of the Universal Commerce Protocol as a common language that lets AI assistants and retail assistants communicate with each other in a predictable, auditable way, from product discovery through checkout and into post purchase support. Google's framing is that instead of every retailer building a custom connection for every new assistant or platform, UCP standardizes the interaction so agents can operate together across consumer services, merchants, and payment providers. Two big two things matter for retailers. First, of course, control. Google's documentation is explicit that a retailer remains the merchant of record, keeping customer relationships and data. Second, trust and security. UCP is designed to create a transparent accountability trail across merchants, credential providers, and payment services. And Google is not treating this as a theoretical exercise. Its reference implementation is intended to enable direct buying inside conversational experiences like AI mode in Search and Gemini, with checkout friction reduced through Google Pay and saved wallet details.
Thanks, Johannes. And speaking of Google, attention Gmail users. Help Me Write and suggested replies are rolling out to everyone at no cost. Starting last week, everyone can use Help Me Write to polish emails or draft them from scratch. There are also new suggested replies, an update to Smart Replies, which uses the context of your conversation to offer relevant one click responses that match how you write. The proofread feature is available for Google AI Pro and Ultra subscribers. And this may seem like just another cool tool from Google, but Johannes, do you feel that this marks a bigger achievement for Google?
Yes, and I think that the bigger achievement here is that Google is repositioning Gmail from a place you read messages into a place you extract answers and act. In its own roadmap, the headline is AI overviews. Instead of returning a list of emails, Google can synthesize long threads and, if you have the eligible plan, answer natural language questions by putting the relevant details together. That is search style retrieval and reasoning, but applied to your personal inbox. The second signal is what Google says is coming next, an AI inbox organized around decisions and to dos, while emphasizing that this analysis happens with privacy protections and your data remaining under your control. And when Google says it will add more personalization by drawing context from other Google apps, that is the bigger play, making Workspace behave like one integrated system rather than separate tools.
Thank you, Johannes. And Grok is back in the headlines after a relatively tame request by X users to alter photographs to show women in bikinis rapidly evolved during the first week of the year. Hour by hour, the requests intensified into increasingly explicit demands for women to be dressed in transparent bikinis, then in bikinis made of dental floss, placed in sexualized positions, and I'll just stop there with those more explicit details. But by the 8th of January, as many as 6,000 bikini demands were being made to the chatbot every hour, according to analysis conducted for The Guardian. This unprecedented mainstreaming of nudification technology triggered instant outrage from the women affected, but it was days before the regulators and politicians woke up to the enormity of the proliferating scandal. The public outcry raged for 9 days before X made any substantive changes to stem this trend. And by the time they acted, degrading, non consequential, manipulated pictures of countless women has already flooded the internet. And the story takes a darker turn here. So, Johannes, would you mind telling the story about Evie and share a glimpse of just how dark and disturbing the content in question has become?
Sure. So let me take it from here, Tiffany. Evie is a 22-year-old photographer from Lincolnshire in the UK. She woke up on New Year's Day to find fully clothed photos of herself turned into sexualized fakes using Grok and posted online. She censored and shared one image to thwart others, and that act made her a target. People piled on, generating even more degrading edits to punish her for speaking up. Her takeaway was blunt. When it takes seconds and no expertise, harassment becomes mass production. So the fallout of this month's Grok excursion is already global. Indonesia and Malaysia have temporarily blocked access to Grok while demanding stronger safeguards. In Britain, Ofcom has opened an Online Safety Act investigation, and ministers have signaled tougher laws aimed at notification tools. The European Commission has ordered X to preserve Grok-related records, and regulators in France, India, and Australia have moved forward with prosecutions, takedown demands, or formal investigation. But there's another layer to this. So last month, as you mentioned, we reported that Grok was doxing addresses. And after our December newscast, I added anti-doxing guardrails to the North Pole Newsdesk AI agents that I had created for Christmas. This month, Grok gives us notification. Fortunately, I do not need to update my own agent because I do not allow image uploads for image generation. And I already have guardrails in place to prevent requests for explicit content in Sandertown. However, other developers are not so lucky. Anyone running AI agents that generate images from uploaded photos now has to audit their systems, add new guardrails, and build clearer off ramps. Every time something like this happens, AI agents across the ecosystem have to be rechecked and updated. In all honesty, Grok is creating a lot of work that nobody asked for.
Thanks, Johannes. And Meta has cut a trio of deals to power its artificial intelligence data centers, securing enough energy to light up the equivalent of about 5 million homes. The parent company of Facebook recently announced agreements with TerraPower, Oklo, and Vistra for nuclear power for its Prometheus AI data center that is now being built in New Albany, Ohio. Meta announced Prometheus, which will be a 1 gigawatt cluster spanning across multiple data center buildings in July, and now it's anticipated to come online this year. The Mark Zuckerberg led Meta said in a statement on Friday that the three deals will support up to 6.6 gigawatts of new and existing clean energy by 2035. A single gigawatt, according to a general industry standard for utilities, can power about 750,000 homes. So that's a lot of power. What are your thoughts on this, Johannes?
Well, what jumps out to me is that Meta is no longer acting like a large electricity customer. It's behaving like a long term backer of generation and grid reliability. The Vista agreements are a good example. These are 20-year contracts tied into PGM, the regional transmission organization that operates the electric grid across much of the US Mid Atlantic and Midwest. They keep three existing nuclear plants economically viable and fund upgrades of about 433 megawatts, while that power continues to serve the broader grid, not just Meta. The second point is the new nuclear bed. TerraPower's Natrium design pairs nuclear generation with built-in energy storage. 345 megawatts of baseload power with the ability to ramp up to 500 megawatts for more than 5 hours, making it better suited for modern variable demand. Oklo, meanwhile, is using Meta's backing to begin early work in 2026, targeting initial operations around 2030. And the reason is simple. PGM itself is forecasting an unprecedented surge in electricity demand, driven largely by data centers, with projected growth approaching 30 gigawatts by 2030.
Wow. Thank you, Johannes. And all computing devices require a part called memory, or RAM, for short term data storage. But this year, there won't be enough of these essential components to meet worldwide demand. That's because companies like Nvidia, Advanced Micro Devices, and Google need so much RAM for their artificial intelligence chips, and those companies are the first ones in line for the components. Three primary memory vendors are Micron, SK Hynix, and Samsung Electronics. They make up nearly the entire RAM market, and their businesses are benefiting from the surge in demand. We've seen a very sharp, significant surge in demand for memory, and it has outpaced our ability to supply that memory and, in our estimation, the supply capability of the whole memory industry. Micron business chief Sumit Sadana told CNBC this week at the CES trade show in Las Vegas. Johannes, how could the so called memory wall cause a bottleneck?
The memory wall is actually a long-standing problem in computer design. So over the years, processors have become dramatically faster at doing calculations, but memory systems have not kept pace in how quickly they can deliver the data. The result is that a modern chip can be ready to work, but is forced to wait because the information it needs is stuck in memory or moving too slowly. That gap becomes especially visible in today's AI systems. Training and running large models means constantly pulling huge blocks of data, model weights, intermediate activations, and response history back and forth between memory and the processor. When that flow slows down, the accelerator is no longer limited by how powerful it is, but by how fast data can reach it. So the bottleneck isn't a lack of computing power, it's that expensive chips sit idle, waiting to be fed. That's why demand is concentrating on high bandwidth memory like HBM, and why shortages there ripple through the entire AI supply chain. If memory can't keep up, adding more compute doesn't help, and that's the wall the industry is now running into.
Thank you, Johannes. And Ionic Mineral Technologies was recently mining in the clay in Utah when it chanced upon what could be the critical mineral equivalent of a gold mine. Ionic MT had leased the land as part of its business producing nanosilicon for lithium ion batteries, which are used in electric vehicles. But the company told Wall Street Journal Pro Sustainable Business that what it found was a host of other minerals in what it says may be the most significant critical mineral reserve in the US. China dominates the critical minerals market with while supplying about 90% of the world's rare earth minerals. The Trump administration sees critical mineral mining in the US as a national security priority. The minerals are used in everything from semiconductors for electronics to defense. The administration recently struck a deal with Australia to invest more than 3 billion combined in such projects. The company so far has drilled an area covering more than 600 acres to a depth of 100 feet, but there is much more to explore. We know this is a sizable deposit, and we know that that's just scratching the surface, Zaitan said. Johannes, can you tell us more about the discovery?
Sure, Tiffany. So, what makes this site stand out is not just what Ionic MT found, but the way the minerals are embedded in the ground. According to the company, independent third party testing shows the deposit sits in halloysite rich, iron adsorption clays. That matters because, unlike hard rock mining, these clays tend to hold rare earths and other strategic metals in a form that can be separated with less heat, less crushing, and fewer processing steps. Ionic describes the deposit as an IAC plus system. In practical terms, that means rare earth concentration that stack up well against known global deposits, alongside other materials the technology sector depends on, like metals like gallium, germanium, and scandium, which show up in semiconductors, advanced magnets, and specialty electronics. Just as important is how quickly this could move. The land in Utah is already permitted for mining, which removes one of the biggest sources of delay. Roads, water, and power are already in place across roughly 8,000 acres. And Ionic plans to process the material at its existing facility in Provo. As the company CEO put it, this is a district, not a mine. In other words, the scale is regional, not a single pit, and many of the usual infrastructure hurdles simply are not there. The next test is economic reality. Ionic says it's developing a lower temperature, lower emissions extraction process and is aiming to publish a preliminary economic assessment in the first half of 2026. That study will determine whether the geology translates into a viable domestic supply chain.
Thanks, Johannes. And thank you all so much for joining us today. But before we go, we want to remind you to sign up for your membership to TechScope Connect, which you can do at techscopeconnect.com. And be sure to mark your calendars and register to attend our 2026 Emerging Tech Trends virtual event taking place on January 29th. More information on the event is available at iotmktg.com. Any final words, Johannes?
Well, one last note before we go. So, the most important stories this year won't necessarily be about what's possible. Of course, we'll cover that, but we'll also talk about what's being deployed, what's being governed, and what's scaled. And that's where we'll keep our focus. So, thank you all for joining us.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you.